Okay, well, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the country. First of all, nice to see you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Michaela Alpers. I'm our Chief Business Officer at Career Team and Career Edge, and I am joined today by my colleague Harrison Tunney, who is our Chief Innovation Officer. So essentially, we are partners out there working on the Career Edge platform. He handles all of our product development, and we work together on all of our partnerships. And today we wanted to have a conversation with you all about workforce and case management and how we have been working and partnering with organizations, workforce boards, cities, states, you name it, across the country to really bring workforce up to the 21st century. Automation, creating remote access for job readiness, streamlining the application processes, helping to remove some of our historically very manual and burdensome processes from timesheets to documentation capture and so forth with our platform, the Career Edge. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today. Of course, we welcome you all to type into the chat at any point if you have any questions or feedback on any of the services that we're talking about. Before we get into any of the platform, I did want to go ahead and give you a little bit of a backdrop on who Career Team is, because I think it will help paint the picture as to how we got to where we are today. So right now you should see in front of you a map of the United States. This is going to give you a landscape of the company of Career Team and Career Edge and how we came to be. Back in 1996, we were founded as a direct services workforce development provider, meaning that we've run WIOA programs and TANF programs with physical career centers and case management staff, business services staff, trainers, et cetera, for many, many years, since 96. About 10 years ago, we started to take a look at all of our best practices from our physical brick and mortar career centers. And we're looking at ways that we could create a single standard of excellence across all of those purple dots that you see. Those are our direct services sites. That's where we actually operate physical career centers with about 350 case management staff today. And we wanted to create a system that would allow us to provide the same level of service, whether a job seeker was walking through our doors in Washington, D.C., or Delaware, or Philadelphia, or now all the way out to the West Coast in the states of Washington and California. So what we did is we started to look at how we were training our job seekers for job readiness activities, things like resume development and interviewing skills, and created the Career Edge platform initially as a standard training platform for how we were delivering workshops and onboarding our own staff. After a couple of years of doing that, we realized that there was a need for career readiness programming and creating operational capacity, not only for workforce boards, but also for different school partners, technical institutions, community colleges, high schools, you name it. So that's what you see there. Those are the three legs of the stool. We have our direct services sites in purple. Everywhere you see a green dot is where an educational institution, whether it be a technical institution, a community college, a university or high school that uses Career Edge for career readiness curriculum programming, as well as an online career services management system. And then all those yellowish orange dots, that's where we have other partners, whether it be a city or a state or a workforce board that utilizes our Career Edge platform as the engine to drive their virtual service delivery and automation of their workforce processes. So I just wanted to share that backdrop on Career Team because I think it's important to know that we are practitioners. We are boots on the ground. We're working directly with career seekers every day who come to us with many barriers and varying degrees. And we know what it's like to be working with somebody that's a hard to serve population that has lots of barriers and needs that type of support. We are not a big box publisher that suddenly decided to build a career services curriculum, nor are we a large software company that happened to try to build a workforce case management system. This is all built out of best practices of working directly with career seekers every single day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Harrison Tunney, who's going to talk to you all a little bit about some of the challenges that we've heard from you and some ways that we've looked to address that. As we go through, if you have questions, like I said, please feel free to type them into the chat and we'll keep our eyes on as we go through. So Harrison, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Michaela. So yeah, we're excited to show you some of the different places where we have helped kind of as consultants, but also practitioners building the actual systems for case management and how to use and better use technology in our workforce systems and help that process. And so as Michaela was just pointing out some of those points on the map, just to highlight a few of them, and then we'll actually show you some examples of these. So in Washington, D.C., their Summer Youth Employment Program. They've used it for over 90,000 participants over the past 6 years. We're also in places in states like Kentucky, where entire workforce systems and education are coming together on one singular platform to be able to deliver some of the services that we have. In LA, same thing, right? Being able, especially during the pandemic when people weren't going into offices, being able to offer them different services, different content and tools for job seekers on the front end, but then also in places like Detroit, where they're using this for their Summer Youth Employment Program for the intake process, application, also their timesheets. So once they are in their work sites, being able to clock in and clock out, and all of the other kind of paperwork that comes involved with that application process and with that whole tracking and managing of their participants. Now, before we go into things, I'd love to get an idea. And so I have a slide coming up that is the workforce technology investments that we currently make. I highlighted the ones in orange, meaning the CRM or the case management side of things, which is what we're focusing on today. So I'd love to hear from everybody that's on today. What are you currently using? Again, specifically for case management, but you can also see there's some other things in there. So if you have a learning management system, or if you are using any other type of tools, so things like, I put some examples on there, optimal resume, interview stream, any type of assessments that you might be using. But what are you currently using in your workforce system? Is it Geographic Solutions or VOS? I know that in Florida, it's called Employ Florida. In Missouri, it's called Mo Jobs. That's Geographic Solutions, the VOS system. Other places are using Salesforce or ETO, which is also provided by Social Solutions. And so these are different case management systems, all have their own kind of ways of doing things, all in different capacities. Some of them, and I'm just looking up right now. Okay, so yep, we see some, Allison would be the learning management system, yep, or the content that you're receiving on there. Moodle as being one of the learning management systems, Geographic Solutions, yep. CT Hires, right, in Connecticut, so that's Geographic Solutions again. As you can see, they have a pretty big presence. They've probably been around for the longest and have that large presence. So awesome, thank you very much. That helps me get an idea of where everybody's coming from and kind of what they're currently used to in their case management and managing of that. Okay, so now that we've identified what some of the things are that we're using, I know that, and again, a lot of people kind of throughout their state system, but also think on your local level, right? Your current needs as a board or in your local region, as far as what are some of the needs that you might have that are different from the state system. So I'd love to ask the question of what are some of the current case management system challenges that you might be experiencing. And now this isn't necessarily going to turn into a session where we're talking all about the challenges that you might have with your state system, because right, we're not from the state, like we're not the ones that are able to fix some of those things. But the reason why we ask that is because, right, again, we've worked with multiple different places where we try to fill in those gaps as far as, okay, these are the needs that we have, right, that might not be in the state system. Maybe it's a special grant that you have that you're looking to track and monitor, and you're just throwing it into a spreadsheet and everybody's kind of managing it off of that. So what are some of the current challenges? And if they're, and so, yeah, if you could put those into the chat now, and then what I'll do is I'll also give you some suggestions as far as what are some of the challenges that we've seen in multiple places, right? And some of these will probably start to spark some of those issues maybe that you've had, or some of the different, capabilities or limited capabilities that you might have. So you can see, one person put in the chat, multiple places to document student progress or information within workforce department, right? So that's one of those things, right? Having multiple different data sources in different places, whether it's a spreadsheet or an email or somebody's individual computer. Yes, being able to support the tracking of them or services tracking, all documentation in one place, timesheets, no ability to pull reports when we need them. So that's a huge one, right? I know that in a lot of our places, you might get a phone call any time of day that says, hey, can you run that report for me? And where are those things? And you're like, I gotta have to, give me a few days to figure that out, as opposed to being able to just look it up and pull it right then and there. So one of the things I'll point out on here, I know just because it's, this isn't necessarily a design conversation, but that bullet point of poor UI UX, that stands for user interface, user experience. Of course, right? I know that some of the systems that we use might be a little outdated. And so that comes with kind of that territory, right? Of not having a fully system that's fully built out to have a nice user experience. And by user, I mean the job seeker end, and then also the staff end, also your employers, right? That are interacting on there. And that also goes in tune with the mobile friendliness, right? So making sure that not only can people use the system on their computers and at their desktop, but also from their phones at any time, anywhere, right? However they are comfortable with, again, kind of interacting and being able to do things. Okay. I see some other things in the chat. Awesome. Yeah, all of it, getting all the components to talk to each other instead of having to re-enter information. Yeah, another huge challenge, right? Dual data entry. Nobody wants to hear that. Especially, right, our case managers, as some of you might be, right, having to type in the same thing over and over in multiple systems. So very good points. Okay. One of the other things that really highlights kind of some of these challenges was obviously the pandemic, right? I know when the pandemic hit, it put a stress test on everybody to say, how are we going to do things? How are we going to be able to deliver our services virtually, right? And that's when everybody signed up for a Zoom account, everybody signed up for a DocuSign account, right? To be able to have digital signatures on things. So just some other questions as far as helping you kind of get in the mindset of, and I put case management plus virtual service delivery, right? Because I think nowadays, people want to have that one singular system, right? The go-to place, so that it's not like, oh, my admin, my case manager, they go into some system behind the scenes and they enter in some case notes, but instead it's more of a full picture of the virtual services that we are delivering and that they are receiving as a customer, meaning the job seeker or the employer. So just some other questions as far as things to think about that we've seen as far as how we're delivering services. It goes down from intake and application, getting into then how are you actually delivering workshops and tracking that experience as they're being prepared for a job. Then the interview process, right? Tracking the candidate's success, meaning after they have a job, what are we doing with that information after? And then last but not least, right, once the employers start interacting with them, how are we tracking things? Whether it is a timesheet that somebody mentioned before, or whether it's some other things that we need to make sure that we're following up with them and making sure there's some automation involved in that as well. Okay. So let's get into the career edge system, what we talked about before, where all those little points on the map were. So the career edge, what we tried to do is we tried to create a system that encompassed all of these different challenges that you might be having. And so we tried to bucket each one of our services or our system functionality in order to accomplish some of those needs that we have. So what we'll be doing today is going through each one of these and showing you some different ways that some of those different places have utilized these buckets and been able to have some different results. Definitely been able to see a change in the way that they serve clients and a way that their staff is working, because now they have these different tools available to them. So again, kind of that beginning, and this is kind of the life cycle, right? As a job seeker would go through, starting off with just applying for a program, being able to collect all the documentation, fill out all the forms. I know in government, we love filling out forms or having people fill out forms for us. So being able to collect that all under one place, making it an easy process. Then going into something like an assessment, an orientation, being able to allow them to be able to take some online classes, being able to use some tools to prepare themselves. So we'll show you things like a resume builder, a mock interview simulation trainer where they can practice doing their interview. Then from there, going into an employer portal where we have matchmaking, there's also job board capabilities. And then once they're placed like in a work site for like a summer internship program, how can they check in, clock in for their timesheet, have that signed off by a supervisor, and you can then collect the data on it. And then last but not least, one of our newest features is being able to track the financial side of things. So entering in, if you get a new grant, enter in that grant amount, and then being able to tie participants to that grant amount so that it starts deducting from it, and you can see how much money is being given out, what it's being given out for, and being able to track everything at the same time. So we're going we're excited to get into things. Any questions before we jump in there? I know somebody just asked if there's any plans on expanding to Hawaii. So yes, of
I think
course.
that there are plans and that I will be the one that will be traveling to Hawaii to handle any of those business needs. So yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's just make the whole team go. Okay. I think that's what, yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, so any other questions before we jump in and show you some of the ways that we're doing and accomplishing some of these things? If not, we will jump in and we'll start with the first one, which is application documentation and signatures, because that's my favorite because it's also the most challenging, right? I made the joke before that we have a lot of forms for people to fill out. I know that we have to have them fill them out, and that's part of the process, and we have to ask them for this and collect this data. But I do think that there is a better way that we can be doing it. So what I want to show you is how we're doing it in Tampa. So in the Tampa region, they have their virtual workforce center, right? They want to be able to provide services virtually 100% of the way so that somebody doesn't have to come into a center. Now, I know, because I've talked to a lot of you, is that this is a challenge everywhere. People are no longer coming into the centers, right? They're no longer coming in because they used to not have to come in, right? During the pandemic, they said, I want to stay home and do everything. Now we're saying, wait, our doors are open. Please come in and see us. And they're like, I think we're okay, right? And so that's not necessarily a good thing, but we do need to be able to meet them where they're at, give them the option, and possibly have even like a hybrid, right? Get them started online, maybe draw them in online, and then get them to come into the door so that we can help them with the person. Okay, so once for their experience, right, to register in their intake and application process, what we do is we try to make it very bite-sized in the way that we're asking them questions and getting them enrolled. But you can also see that there's a human. Now it's a recording of a human, but it's still good to show a face, right? That somebody is welcoming them to the system, but they're also describing why are we asking these questions. So what they can do is they can start off, right? Create an account, but then what they were doing is we're then going to start taking them through the questions that we would ask in intake. Again, having a person describe why we're asking these questions. And then again, question by question, they're able to answer each one of these things. Now, in the background, as they're answering each question, we're also determining what programs is this person eligible for. Because then once they go through our questionnaire, we're then going to show them, based on your answers, here are the programs that you can start enrolling in today. So
Now,
as
I
you
want
can
to pause here and just say that one of the biggest challenges we heard when the pandemic hit is a lot of our programs would just throw their applications online. There were lots and lots of fields to complete. It wasn't very intuitive where to click next. So just going digital is not enough. We really have to make sure that we're really intentional about the user interface. And I don't know if you all noticed, but as Harrison is going through, we have a video that's giving very specific guidance and instruction about what it is that you need to complete here and why, so that people are constantly being reminded of the why. And then they're able to see in real time their progress. So the first question is, are you digital? The second question is, are you gamified? And gamification is a way of engaging people, giving them breadcrumbs, making sure that they know exactly how much they've progressed. And when we moved Tampa and other partners to this more step-by-step, very clean interface with very obviously what you need to do to get through this process, those application completion rates significantly increase. So as you're looking at this, it's not just about, have we checked the box that we've gone online? Have we done it the right ways? And are we employing the best user interface, best practices to make sure that we're optimizing a user's experience so that they're more likely to persist and land in our programs?
Okay. So after, as I was mentioning, you go through your questionnaire, it's then going to tell you what programs you are eligible for, eligible or pre-eligible for, because then they can start the enrollment process into each one of these. Now, depending on what the programs are that you offer, you can see there's one that's here that's Florida specific. Each one of those enrollment buttons might go to an external website where they have to enter, they have to register somewhere else. But what we'd like to do is try to build in as many of these forms and the processes that are related to these programs within, again, one singular system. And so from here is where they might go to something like in Detroit, which I mentioned before, they have something called an enrollment checklist. So this is a place where I can now start the enrollment process and work my way through a checklist of different forms that I need to fill out. As I mentioned before, a lot of different forms. this is their list of forms, right? Each one of these they can open up, they can sign off digitally or fill out more information, but then it can also show them where their progress is or where they are in the process, right? Of submitting the form, and then has it been approved? Has it not been approved? Is there a comment that's been left by their case manager? And how have they kind of worked through that process? And so again, we're trying to, make this as easy a process as possible. This same kind of view, right, where I can see my progress, where I can see what stage I'm in, is the same for an admin as it is for the front end user, so that they always know where they are in the process and they know kind of, again, where they are and what their status is. Okay, so that's kind of to be able to complete the forms by program, but then there's also the ability to upload documents, right? And so kind of the section 2 is being able to upload documents. Same thing, upload a document, see whether it's been submitted, approved, not approved, and also a comment given by their case manager. Now, this is just one example of kind of how somebody can walk through that process of intake, fill out the forms. But I will say that our system is not kind of a one size fits all, right? And so no matter where you go with all of the different customers that we're kind of jumping around and showing you, everybody has a little bit of a different process, right? A lot of you are capturing the same data, same forms, but there might be a different process, right? And so just keep that in mind, that whenever we're creating these different things, is that we're always first looking at your current process, the current data that you're looking for, and also the reports at the back end that you want to be able to generate, and what kind of some of your goals are, whether it's serving more people, serving people better, right? Spending more time with them, right? And being able to give them more services, and then making a system that adjusts and is that that's trying to meet those outcomes. Okay. So now let me jump backwards, not backwards, but let me jump back to a slide that I had before, just to kind of show you the overall part in the process. Because what our system is, and you may have seen it on one of our intro slides, is that we're not just a case management system, right? Where you're inputting data, filling out forms, but really what we want to do is we want, as Michaela said before, to gamify the experience. And so even on the intake, right, they're getting a little progress bar. But after they go into an actual program, or after they go through intake, we want them to start getting some information and getting content and getting some similar services that they would if they went into a workforce center. And so this is where we start letting them use our LMS, right? Where they can go in and they can start using our content and our tools, which is what I'll show you next. So what we have is we already have a series of videos and a library of content that's being used. I'm going to log into our demo site, which, by the way, as I'm logging in, if there is anybody that is on today and you would like access to either the PowerPoint presentation that we're showing with screenshots of everything, but then also access to our demo site that I'm about to walk through and show you a little bit more of. If you'd like access, please put it in the chat. Just put your email address in the chat, and we'll be sure to follow up right after this, get you login credentials so that you can actually log in and play around with it, see some of the modules and tools that we'll be going through today. Okay. So as I was mentioning, you can see on the top, there's different buckets of modules. So life skills, professional development, and industry exploration. So this is content that's available for job seekers to be able to use. Depending on what program that they're in, right? If they're a youth, they might need to go through some of the introductory modules. If there's somebody that's really a lot more job ready, they might be going into preparing for the interview or working on their job search strategies. Those are different places, right, where we would set it up based on the program that they're in, that those are the modules that they get to go to and get to experience. If they're not sure what industry they actually want to go into and they need to learn more about the industries that are available, that's where they can come into some of these modules. Now, each one of the modules has a series of videos, exercises. There could be an audio lesson in there. So I'm just showing you an example of one. There's a digital workbook for them to flip through, and then also like a quiz or an assessment that allows us to measure the competency that has been gained, right? So they might take a pre-assessment, go through the module, take a post-assessment, and then we're able to measure kind of the skills that have been obtained there. So you can see inside of the module, I won't go through all of the content that is on here. I know we wanted to be more case management focused on this webinar anyways. But again, if you want any more, if you want login to go in here, play around with some of these, feel free to put your email in the chat and we'll definitely send you over some login information.
And I just want to stress that a lot of the tools that you're seeing here in the content, when we had to transition all of our brick and mortar career centers to online virtual career centers, we were accidentally prepared. We had this tool that we were able to help our case management staff reimagine their delivery. And what we found is that Most of our job seekers, are engaging with us after work hours, over the weekends, and people that we wouldn't have been able to get to if we were requiring them to come in for these services because of, transportation barriers, or maybe there is a career center that's an hour away from where they live. We were really able to provide a concierge level of service without having to ask them to come in. So we're keeping this model. We're not going to be fully remote for, we're going into a hybrid delivery where we can provide services in whichever way our job seekers want to receive it. But these are the kinds of tools that allow us to do that, because when you're thinking about your virtual content delivery strategy, you need to make sure that you're utilizing content that you can track. So just as important as it is that the users have access to these resources 24/7 from their phones, from local libraries and different access points that we've set up throughout our geographies, our case management staff needs a mechanism to be able to monitor this and provide them with real-time feedback. So if I'm a job seeker and I choose to do a resume on Sunday evening at 10 p.m., when my case manager logs into the back end of our system on Monday morning, they're going to see that there's a new resume for them to review. And that's how you digitize and create a hybrid delivery model, is that you need to make sure you're using online content and tools that your case management staff is still able to take action on. And the only way to do that is to have them, the front end and the back of the system, talking to each other.
Okay, so in addition to the content and modules that I was showing you, is that we also have these tools. These are pretty fun because they're very interactive. And so, for example, our interview simulation trainer is probably our most popular because it allows them to practice an interview. But with practicing the interview, they also get a coach who coaches them through the process. So at first he starts talking and preparing them for the interview, but then when you actually jump into the interview, you'll see on the left-hand side, there's a person who's interviewing me, and they're saying, hey, welcome to the interview. Why don't you tell me about yourself? And then what I can do is, when I'm ready, I can click record, and then that will start my camera within the Career Edge, so that I can record my answer, and I can start recording, and I can click stop. And then I can watch it and play it back for me, so that I can watch myself, see how I did, and see if I want to retake it and see how I'm answering, and be able to kind of work my way through the different questions. And so on here, we already have all these preloaded questions for them to go through. We also have more questions in the industry exploration that are industry specific questions that they'd be asked on an interview for healthcare, or for if they're going for a construction position. How would they actually be answering that, or how would they be asking that question in the interview? And again, there's a coach who's coaching them along the way as they're going through the questions. Okay, so really cool stuff for them to be able to go through. Again, for sake of time, I won't go through all these, but the resume builder is probably another huge one, something that everybody needs a resume. We coach them through the process of how to build a resume, but also make it an easy step-by-step thing where they can just go one step at a time, filling out the answers, and then we create the resume for them. We design it for them so that they don't have to know how to do it in Microsoft Word, but we also give them suggestions along the way as well. So if they pick that they're an accounting program, great. Here's some suggested bullet points for how to fill it out if you are in accounting. And then it also takes them through each piece of the resume, again, with the coaching, and then the ability to download it at the end. Okay. So what we're trying to do here with a lot of the tools, right, is save time for, let's say, our trainers, case managers, business services, so that they know that the person that is coming to them is going to be job ready because they went through these modules, right? Because they now have a resume and they were taught how to write a resume, again, virtually, as opposed to having to go to a workshop or having to meet with somebody one-on-one. And instead, we're getting right that 80% of the way there on their own, as opposed to, again, kind of starting from step one. Okay.
And just to give you a sense of the strategy we employed with this, we call it a flipped classroom approach. I come from higher education. I've been helping schools transition from brick and mortar to hybrid to fully online programming. So we took some of those best practices and said, we want to flip the classroom and have our career seekers go to the technology first, complete a first draft of their resume, and then come to our staff for the fine tuning. Historically in workforce, we've sat across the desk, we've gotten out a blank piece of paper and gone to town building out a resume one by one by one. And it's a 1 to 2 hour process per career seeker. And that's a great process, but it's not a necessary process. And when we've gone to this strategy, we've been able to get our career seekers to produce a resume that's about 75% of the way there before they even engage with somebody one-on-one. And why that's important is that it's really freed up a lot of our case managers' time to do those things that they're uniquely qualified to do, like community engagement, working with employers, and removing those non-academic barriers that are critical to our job seekers' success. So I just encourage you to think about your strategy from top to bottom. Are we leaning on technology for a high touch and high tech approach? Because when we utilize these tools, we're able to see a 43-minute time savings per session on things like mock interviews and resume development. And that's very significant when we think about how we're structuring our caseloads and how we're structuring our case manager's day. So just want to point that out. There's some staff capacity building that we're able to create when we utilize these tools, in addition to meeting with job seekers that otherwise would have never come through our doors.
Yep. So now the other thing that I wanted to do is jump a little bit into the admin side of things, where you're able to track and monitor whether it's applications, whether it's the progress that they have on the learning management side, or I'll also start to talk about employers and employers in the system. And so on here, this is a kind of a more simple version of one of our admin sites where you can see when I log in, right, I'm mostly managing the applicants. It's telling me the applicants and also what status that they're in. And so each one of our systems, when we're designing it, is going to have a series of different statuses for somebody to go into. So these are things that you predetermine once somebody applies into a program. Are they accepted? Are they rejected? Are they pending qualified? And once you put them into that status, that's then going to trigger an email, a text message to get sent to them, but also maybe an internal timer that says, hey, they have 2 weeks to complete this or 2 weeks to do the next task. And that can be either for the job seeker or for the staff. And so in the background, things that you're not seeing, right, are some of those automatic notifications and alerts that are happening that are all, again, predetermined when we're working with you, talking about implementation on how the system should work and the different benchmarks or checkpoints throughout. So you can see under here is that I have a list of all of the job seeker applications. You can see I also have a tab that says employer applications. So this takes me and shows me all the employers that are in the system as well. So they have both a job seeker application and an employer application. And then you can also see all the different data points that's being captured for each applicant, right? And so you might have something where you say, okay, this person's in the system. I can edit their application. I can put them into a status. I can also put notes on them, assign them to an administrator here. You can see their statuses. Here's their case notes, right? Kind of just a log of all of their different activities. But then you can also add, and I mentioned activities, so that's kind of on a case note side, but then you can also have these more structured activities where you can select from a series of different activities that a person would be able to, or service that they would be able to receive. And then once you do this, let's say it's a short-term training, well, then it's going to ask me, okay, who was the training provider that was giving that training? And then it's going to have all of your training providers. Let's say it's the Cruise Institute. Now it's going to say, okay, here are the different programs that are offered by them and training opportunities. So now I can start to put in and document the services that have been delivered to the individual. I can save this. I can add new ones. I can add as many as I want to. But that allows you to now track and monitor the activities and services that are being provided to individuals. So one thing that we do with this place is that we also tie these to possibly your state system, right? And so those can be case notes or they can be services that are provided, right? So the code that's on your state system as far as services provided can be linked to our system to be able to have those, again, speak the same language, have the same kind of codes on them, so that again, it's a similar process to the state side. Okay, you can see some of the other things, right? If you wanted to capture employment history, program outcomes, these are all customizable kind of fields and data buckets for you to be able to capture and put on each individual. And like I said, that goes for both job seekers and the employers. Now, the difference for the employers as we transition to employers is that employers might also have the ability to post jobs. And that is where those jobs can then be located on something like a job board. And so on this particular job board, they have a series of internships, but also full-time or direct hire positions. So this is where they're able to see who's the employer, what's the position, is it open, is it filled, how many applicants have applied for this position. And again, they can manage now the job postings that have been input by an employer. And now you start to have the employers being able to access the system and being able to go in there and post their jobs. Now, in addition to being able to post jobs, you might also want to give employers the ability to search for candidates. And so this is an example that I'm showing you right now that will show you how an employer can log in and they can actually search for candidates themselves. So again, you can either post a job and have it be on a job board, or you can go in and directly start to find candidates that you're interested in. In this place, I have my saved candidates, suggested candidates that have been suggested to me either by somebody in career services or suggested candidates because they fit, the criteria that I've set in something like a search like this. This search has a lot of different options, but you can see that I can just check off one of these, click search, and then it's going to show me my test accounts that are on there. But yeah, it's going to show me what are the results for that search, right? If I search for that particular position or that particular program, who are the individuals, who are the students that fit that profile or that have those skills for me to look at their profiles or to look at their resumes, okay? So a really easy way for employers to be able to search through candidates that are searching, that are looking for jobs and that are job searching in your system, okay?
One thing to consider, just like I was saying with the job seeker side of this, it makes it a lot easier to engage with your employers if you know who they're interested in, what they're doing. So whenever somebody clicks on a profile or clicks to contact a candidate, the business services staff that is associated with this group of individuals is being notified. There's, every click, every keyword search, every login, how much time is spent in these searches is all captured. So if I'm a business services advisor in the past, maybe I emailed a resume, or even before that, maybe I faxed some resumes. Did I know if the fax got through? Did they pick up the paper document? Did they contact that person? And a lot of us are trying to track our placement outcomes. We want to know, where did somebody go and where did they get hired? This gives us a lot of information to be able to call that employer and say, hey, I noticed that you were looking at so-and-so and would you like me to schedule an interview for you? Or I noticed you're looking for people with this type of background. I've got just the right person for you. So it's really nice to be able to go to that employer armed with information that builds a relationship and shows that you're paying attention to their specific needs.
Any questions on the employer side of things? I know the employers could get a little bit, it goes in a different direction also because, again, we're not trying to necessarily compete with state system, labor exchange, those kind of things. Instead, these are seen in this case, right, that I was just showing you before their admin site with the job board. That was a specific grant that they received where they were providing those job seeker services and employer services through that grant. And so it was something that was separate externally from the state system. The next thing that I'll take you to and show you quickly, because somebody mentioned it in the chat, is our timesheet capability. So timesheets are used a lot with, for example, an internship, externship, summer youth employment program. What we do in that case is just like the job seekers would be applicants, employers would be applicants. Once they are actually approved, then you can start to match them up and assign them to their work site. And that is when they would be able to then have a timesheet enabled for them. And so this is where they'd be able to clock in and out, adds up the total hours for the day, total hours for the week, and then total hours for the pay period. Again, this can be customized to have it be more simplified, right? Just enter the number of hours, or have it be a little bit more robust, right? And break down those hours in the actual minutes. You can see after this, after they fill out their timesheet, they sign off on it digitally, which then submits it to their supervisor. Supervisor gets a notification, tells them to review it. Supervisor signs off. Then they submit it so that it can be finally approved by an administrator, somebody on your level probably. And this is where then this data would then be sent to payroll so that they can do what they do best, which is pay the individuals for their time. And so, yeah, you can see, kind of how that would work and how that would look from a timesheet capability if you're having work sites in an internship program.
Yeah, I saw there was a question. Is it possible to build in universal referral systems for multi-provider system prior to orientation of the application process?
So yeah, that's a good question. You might be asking specifically for a referral program. So we've done it a few different ways. So we've built simple kind of referral intake forms where right? They fill out kind of the basic information that they would need. That goes into our admin site, where then an administrator can pass them to a partner organization, so they can refer them out based on their information, based on maybe even meeting with them, then referring them out. And then what our system does is keeps a log of all of those different referrals, who the person's been passed to, when they've been passed to them, who did the passing, any notes that are associated with it. So yeah, we have done that as a referral system and built our system to be able to provide or be able to have that tracking on it. That would be a thing. That would be a system where you would load in, right? Participants would either apply or you would load them in, and then you'd load in your partners that you would be referring them to. We've also built it out so that those partners would be in different categories, right? So you have your different types of partners for different services, and those get tied into that application so that okay, it can kind of auto refer, right? This person says they are, let's say they're homeless, right? And that's one of their barriers. Then we automatically know in the system, great, here's a list of homeless service providers that we can auto refer them to. Hopefully that answered the question. Let us know if it didn't, or if there's a follow-up after that.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, awesome. Okay, the last piece of the puzzle is being able to track some of the financials. And so this is one thing where this is an example of being able to track the ITAs, right? So if you're distributing ITA vouchers, right, you're distributing different funds for going back to school, going to a training program, being able to track that, I know is an essential part of it. And I know that a lot of that might be done in a spreadsheet, might be done kind of hopefully by the person who's doing it. But this, as you can see, is a system where you can put in your school, the program, the status of the program that they're in, the dollar amount. And then what you can also do is you can then tie it to a grant or tie it to the funding source, funding stream, so that that dollar amount can then be taken away, subtracted from that funding stream, so that now you know how much money is left over. When it starts to bump up and the max amount has been reached, that it doesn't let you use anymore, and it gives you those notifications. This tuition amount that's shown here can also be broken down and be more specific or detailed to show book fees, transportation fees, right? Kind of the additional things, or how you would break that down. And then also, it can also be divided into different funding streams as well. So if you want to say, hey, there's $500 coming from this grant, 500 from this grant, being able to divide it up as well, and be able to have that and track that. Again, on the tracking side and reporting side, you'd be able to pull a report to show how many people are enrolled, how many people have dropped out, what are the providers that are receiving the most students and the most dollars, and are those programs successful? So there's, of course, a lot on the back end that can be reported out, and you can learn from some of those data points on here as well. Okay. Any questions, comments on anything that you've seen today? Or is there anything that we missed maybe? Any of the other functionalities that you were looking for, that you were hoping to get out of today's presentation, that maybe we just didn't cover, or maybe it's something brand new idea that you might have for how to serve individuals using a case management system, LMS system. Anything and everything, greatly appreciate it. But if there's any questions, or if anybody else would like kind of login access to the demo site I showed you before, or just this PowerPoint, which has a lot of other screenshots in it, as well as for our backends, different systems that we've created, feel free to put your email in the chat, and we'll send that over to you.
And every single one of our partnerships looks a little bit different. We're solving different challenges in different parts of the country, and every state has slightly different requirements on how they want to capture documents and things like that. So Harrison and I are always happy to sit down one-on-one with you and your use case and your organization, learn a little bit more about how it is that you're approaching your workforce processes or your career services processes. And we discover together if there's any opportunities to optimize or synergize with the Career Edge system. So if you have any interest in a follow-up conversation, you're welcome to reach out to either of us directly. We will send a follow-up email with all of the information that we covered today, so that we can schedule an appointment. But feel free to let us know and reach out directly if you have any questions.
Yeah, and I can already see by the chat, right? We have a mix of workforce and education, and I know that each one of them has their own kind of needs, also has their own vocabulary. As you could probably see, we try to use a little bit of both, students, job seekers, and so I would say just to reiterate, if you want to have like a one-on-one, then that's something where we can say, okay, if you are workforce, right, here's a specific program, or here's an example of how we've done it. If you are a school, higher ed, high school, whatever it might be, here's a specific instance of how it's worked as more of a career services, right, management system. And so, yeah, those are different examples. But yeah, I see in the chat, can you download other data systems such as Salesforce? So good question. Yeah. So whenever we go into a place, right, sometimes there's already a CRM or some sort of database already established. So yes, we would take that legacy data, map it to our system so that it can be loaded in kind of from another source, so that it can, again, be loaded in and you can still have your historical data that's integrated into your new system. Okay. And same thing going forward, right? If you said, hey, maybe the state just got a new system and they want our data, you'd be able to export it from our system and be able to import it into something else. Okay. That's a good question though. All right. Any other questions? So yeah, I see I need a CRM for outreach to support our demand-driven system. So Princess, we can definitely follow up and schedule a meeting and we can go through some more specifics. I see, yeah, you have some unique needs for case management and workforce. So we'll follow up and we'll schedule a meeting and we can go through some of the specifics. Okay. Any other questions, comments from the group? Awesome.
All right. Well, we just want to thank you all so much for your time and attention today. There's lots of great questions that came through in the chats and lots of participation. And I just want to commend everybody for the wonderful work that you're doing to serve our hardest to serve populations. Our hearts are in this business. We're social entrepreneurs, and we choose to work with this population because we really believe that the gateway to empowerment is to be self-sufficient and have confidence, and everything that we're doing all together is the recipe that creates that. So thank you all so much for your commitment to the participants and the students and job seekers we serve. And we are stewards of the industry first. If you have any questions or can be of support in any way, please reach out and we would welcome an opportunity to further discuss Career Edge and how it might apply to your organization. So we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.